This wild horse who had gotten stuck had given up all hope of being free again, but then a miracle happened. Wild horses can be somewhat of a rare occurrence depending on where you live. In the United Kingdom, for instance, they can only be found in a few places around the country. One of these places is around the Lofor estuary in Gower in the south of Wales, and it was here that one unlucky mare found herself in a tricky situation. The Lofor estuary in Gower is a beautiful natural area. However, due to its location, it has quite a large tidal pool. This means that when the sea is at low tide, the water recedes quite far up to the estuary, leaving behind a large area of low-lying marshland where horses are often found grazing. However, this also means that when the tide turns, it can engulf all of the marshland in a matter of a few hours. Usually, the animals that occupy the land when the sea is out will evacuate as the water comes back in. But in 2018, this became quite a big problem for one wild horse who found herself unable to move. The mare had become stuck on the marshland, and to make matters worse, she had a young foal with her who refused to leave its mother behind. Luckily, a member of the public had been out on a walk on that particular day and had spotted the downed horse struggling to get back onto her feet again. Worried for the animal's safety, as the tide would soon be coming in again, the person quickly called the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, otherwise known as the RSPCA. They told the members of the charity about the situation and where to find the poor animals. They also promised to stay with the horses whilst they waited for the volunteers to arrive. After waiting for roughly a half an hour, the volunteers from the RSPCA finally arrived on the scene, only to see just how dire and heartbreaking the situation was. Stuck on a small bluff out in the marshland was the white mare. She was lying on the ground whilst her chestnut-colored foal was nearby and quite agitated, pacing back and forth. At first, the rescuers weren't sure what was actually wrong with the mare, as she looked to be in quite a healthy condition. But as the volunteers got closer to the horse, they soon realized what had actually happened. It turned out that the mare had somehow gotten her right hind leg caught in her matted mane. The volunteers had no clue how she managed this, but their best guess was that she tried to scratch an itch near her head and got her foot caught. With the problem identified, it was then up to the rescuers to figure out how to help the entangled mare. They knew that they had to approach the situation carefully, as they didn't want to frighten the horse any more than she already was, for fear she'd try to hurt the volunteers, or even worse, cause more damage to her own leg by attempting to get up and run away. If she were to break her leg, for instance, then the rescuers would be in big trouble, as they only had a limited amount of resources on them and definitely not anything that would help transport an injured horse and her foal before the tide came in. With this in mind, the rescuers carefully and cautiously approached both the mare and her foal. With the mare trapped on the ground, she wasn't likely to charge at them, but the volunteers had to be wary of the foal. It might seem little and harmless, but it could still pack a punch by either kicking at them or trying to bite them. As soon as the volunteers tried to approach the mare, she struggled to get back up on her feet in an effort to escape. However, she quickly fell back down again. Meanwhile, her foal began to pace up and down, clearly scared of the unknown humans making their way towards it, but not wanting to stray too far from its mother. As soon as the volunteers were only a few feet away from the mare, the foal ran off to the side, out of reach of the volunteers should they try to capture it, but still close enough to see what was going on. This was actually quite helpful for the volunteers, as they were now able to get to the female horse without worrying about the baby trying to scare them away. One of the volunteers carefully walked behind the mare and sat down just behind her head. But the mare was scared and very skittish. Being wild, she was clearly not used to a human touching her, and she didn't know how to react. So she began to throw her head about and even attempted to try and stand up again. The volunteer was determined to help the animal though, and so he started stroking the horse's head and neck in an effort to calm her down and give her reassurance that they were only there to help her. Upon feeling the gentle and calming touch, the mare soon began to calm down. She then proceeded to lie her head down on the floor. almost as if she knew that the people were there to help her and to free her from her restraint. Once the volunteer knew that the horse wasn't going to try and get away again, he carefully used a knife to cut away the matted section of her mane that was holding her foot in place. That being done, he quickly jumped up from his position on the floor and moved away from the horse so that he would not end up spooking her or getting in the way while she got used to being free again. With the man out of the way, the mare calmly sat up and looked around, as if assessing her situation and coming to realize that she had finally regained the use of all of her legs. Her foal also made its way back over to her, although it still gave a wide berth to all of the nearby volunteers, and stood close by as if to encourage its mother to try and get up again. The white horse took a little more time to build up the courage to move and then tried to get back up on her feet. However, she only managed to do so for a couple of seconds before falling back down onto the ground again. The RSPCA rescuers had no clue just how long the mare had been stuck for, but it had clearly been long enough for her leg to start weakening due to not having been used for a while. Even though there was no visible wound, they began to worry that the horse's leg was injured. They were starting to ponder whether they should call for backup when, a few moments later, the mare tried to get back on her feet again and finally managed. She was back up on her four legs. At first somewhat unsteady, the mare and her foal made their way out of the small ditch that they had been stuck in. The white horse then came to a stop as if to get her bearings right and regain her confidence in walking. She turned back to the rescuers, who were all thrilled to see the beautiful animal and her baby safe and well again. The white mare looked at all of the RSPCA staff as if to thank them for helping her, before heading off across the marshland with her foal. With the two horses saved, the RSPCA volunteers made their way back to their cars, happy that they had managed to save the lives of these beautiful creatures. Thanks to these kind-hearted volunteers and the concerned member of the public, these two horses were able to be rescued from what could have been a terrible fate had they been left to fend for themselves with the tide rising again. It just goes to show that being kind to those who need it, whether it's a person or an animal, is one of the best things to do in life. What's your favorite part of this story? If you loved this story, then let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see even more amazing content, then don't forget to like and subscribe to get regular updates.